Hi everybody. The video you're about to watch is for a recipe called leftovers bread from Mark Bittman's cookbook. I made it last week and just didn't get around to editing the video and putting it together until about a week later. This is probably the first recipe that I've made out of his book that our family really didn't enjoy, so I just want to give you a heads up. Um, I think I baked it right. I think it came out right. I did add more liquid as a high altitude adjustment. That might have been one thing that I could change if I wanted to go back and make it again, but I honestly don't think that even if I did uh, do the original amount of liquid that we would like it. It's just kind of a textural thing more than anything else. So I wanted to let you know before you watch the video um, that my goal with this has been to bake my way through Mark Bittman's cookbook, How to Bake Everything. So that's what I'm going to do. And if things don't turn out, I'm going to tell you about that. And even if they do turn out, but we just don't really like them as a family, um, I'm going to still share that with you. All right. Well, I hope you enjoy watching anyway. It's an interesting recipe, and some of you, it might be something that you haven't heard of. I hadn't heard of it until I made it, and you might be interested in it. So, again, I hope you enjoy. Thanks.
Hi everyone. Today I'm going to make leftovers bread from Mark Bittman's How to Bake Everything. The idea with this bread is that one of the ingredients is some leftover grains that you might have from, making something else. It's medium or coarse type grains. I'm going to use barley. He also says things like spelt, quinoa, bulgur, farro, or buckwheat would work. So I'm going to use barley because I had some left over from a stew or a soup that I made once. It does have some brown sugar and some cinnamon in it, so my guess is going to be a mildly sweet bread, but we'll see. I imagine it's going to be a little bit chewier and more dense because of the addition of the barley. I'm going to reduce the leavening agent a little bit for high altitude and increase the oven temperature. The recipe calls for you to bake it in a oven-proof skillet of some kind, but he also says you can just bake it in like a 9-inch round baking pan. So that's what I'm going to do. All right, we'll take a look at our ingredients next. Here are the ingredients for the leftovers bread. I've got some buttermilk that is actually just regular milk mixed with vinegar. I increased the amount of buttermilk from 1 2/3 cups all the way up to a cup. So what I did is I put 2 tablespoons of vinegar in the measuring cup, and then I filled it up to the 2-cup line. I have some whole wheat flour and all-purpose flour, some salt, some baking powder that I'm going to decrease, some brown sugar, some melted butter, some ground cinnamon, some flaxseed meal to replace the 2 eggs in the recipe, and some barley, which is the leftover grain that I'm going to use for the leftovers bread. I have also a 9-inch round cake pan, just sprayed with some cooking spray, and the oven is preheating to 400 degrees. Here's the dry ingredients minus the sugar. There's the whole wheat flour, the all-purpose flour, some salt, some cinnamon, and baking powder. I decreased the baking powder from 1.5 teaspoons down to a teaspoon for high altitude. So I'm just going to whisk those together just to get them all evenly distributed, so when they go into the rest of the mixture, they will blend easily. I'm ready to start mixing the other ingredients together. So I've got some brown sugar in a large bowl, and I've got the ground flaxseed for the egg. There's 2 eggs called for in this recipe. So this is 2 tablespoons of ground flaxseed mixed with 6 tablespoons water. It's been sitting for about 5 minutes, so it started to get gloopy. That's gonna go in with the brown sugar, and I'm gonna beat that together. So I used a wire whisk to beat the brown sugar and the ground flaxseed together. I don't have my camera person, my daughter Jillian, here with me today, so it's kind of hard to hold the camera with one hand and whisk with the other, so I thought I would just stop filming there for a minute. The next thing I'm going to do is beat in the melted butter, and then I'm going to add the buttermilk. So we've got the liquid ingredients here. The melted butter and the buttermilk have been added. I am now going to stir in the barley. And then I'm going to add the dry ingredients and just put those in until they're just combined, or stir those in until they're just combined. So I've got the barley stirred in there. Here goes the dry ingredients. Just again, gonna stir those until they're just combined, so until all the dry is moistened. Again, sorry for the haphazard camera work here. I don't have my usual assistant with me today. But I think that's looking pretty good. I'm going to double check and make sure I don't have any dry spots down there in the bottom with a rubber spatula. And then I'm going to put that in the pan and bake it probably for somewhere around 20 or 25 minutes, looks like. All right, so we'll see how it turns out. I wanted to show you what it looked like after I put the mixture in the pan. It's pretty high, it's pretty full in the pan. Whenever I see something like that, I'm a little concerned that it's going to overflow the pan as it bakes. I did decrease the baking powder, so hopefully that doesn't happen, but I just thought I would make a record of it here before I put it in the oven in case that's what happens. All right, so this is, it's been baking for about 23 minutes. I checked it at about 20 minutes and it definitely did not look done. It still looked kind of soft, so I didn't even do the toothpick test. But I'm going to do it now and see. I think it probably could brown a little bit more, but I don't want to overdo it, so. Yeah, that toothpick, it's hard to see, but it is a little wet still. So I'm going to let it go a little longer. It says that it should be lightly browned on top, which I think it is that, but also that it should be pulling away from the sides. It's not quite doing that yet, and the toothpick definitely had some moisture on it, so I'm going to let it go for a few more minutes. Well, that was a little crazy because it has now been 45 minutes and I finally decided to take it out. It's browned quite a bit, but I kept checking it every few minutes, and the toothpick was still coming out a little bit wet and then kind of a little bit gooey, so I kept baking it. And the other thing was that the sides really had not pulled away, or the edges had not pulled away from the sides of the pan. So, but finally they started to do that a little bit. So, and I could see that it was browning pretty good around that edge. So the toothpick still was like a little bit of the dough on there, but I really think that it is good and done. So now I'm gonna let it cool and try it in a little bit. All right, so the leftovers bread is mostly cool. It's just a little bit warm still on the bottom. So we're gonna cut it into like a wedge. That's what I'm gonna do. It was very moist. It took a lot longer to bake than it should have, so that's probably because I increased the liquid, but in this case, that might have been the wrong thing to do. So we'll see. Like I said, it's mostly cool, so. For whatever reason, I'm not getting quite through the crust on the edge. Try it again. There we go. Yeah. So you can see that, remember there's barley in there as the grain. It's pretty moist in the center still, I would say. Here. More dried out on the edges, so I don't know if it got quite done in the middle, but it had been in there for 45 minutes, so we're gonna give it a taste and see how it is. Okay, so we all kind of ate off the same piece here on the plate. The flavor's good, the cinnamon is nice in there, but the texture is a little bit different with the barley. It's very moist, it's kind of gluey. On the outside edge of it, it's a little bit drier, so not as much. I think I would like it if it was a little sweeter. Jillian, what did you think?
It was disgusting. The texture is wrong and the flavor was all wrong too.
Okay, so definitely not a fan. But this guy, Jacob, what do you think? Oh, he's got a mouthful, but if you can see, he's got his own piece here that he's eaten about half of it. He tried some off of my plate and was like, I like that, right? So you gotta finish chewing. Working on the new Lego set here. Why do you like it?
I like the flavor, but the texture is a little off.
Okay. Alright, well, I don't think it's something that I'd make again, because in general, if only 1 out of the 4 people in my family wants to eat it, that's not something I'm usually going to spend the time on. Unless it's something I really like, then that's different. But I think it turned out well. Maybe adding the extra liquid wasn't a good idea. I mean, it baked the way it was supposed to, other than maybe it was a little bit too moist. So this is Leftovers Bread from How to Bake Everything by Mark Bittman. And thanks for watching.
For the white.
The only way that I could get my husband to eat it was by allowing him to doctor it up with a bunch of butter and brown sugar on top, and then he microwaved it to make that melt a little bit. As he said, I like butter, I like sugar.
No.
I guess it's kind of like bacon. Butter and sugar make everything taste better.